They didn't just fire me. They took my dignity, emptied my desk, and laughed while I walked out the door. But here's the thing about people who think they're untouchable. They never look down. And that is exactly how I destroyed them. My name is David. And for 3 years, I was the office invisible man. But Sterling, my CEO, made the biggest mistake of his life when he decided to make me his personal target. You see, the person who cleans up your messes is always the one who sees exactly where you're hiding your crimes. Everything changes in seconds. If you think you're safe while you're at the top, you're dead wrong. This is how the invisible man turned into the owner, and how one arrogant billionaire lost everything. The humiliation for 3 years, I was the office invisible man. I made the coffee, I fixed the printers when they jammed, and I took the fall for every single mistake Sterling, our CEO, made. Sterling was the archetype of a bully. Loud, arrogant, obsessed with his own reflection, and completely convinced that anyone who didn't work in the C-suite was beneath his notice. He loved to humiliate me. "Hey, invisible, get me a coffee," he'd bark, usually right after spilling his own all over my desk. He'd mock my cheap suit, he'd laugh at my silence, and he'd make sure every intern in the building knew exactly where I stood in the hierarchy. One afternoon, he decided he didn't like the color of my suit. He laughed, he poured a full, piping hot latte on my project folder, and called me a janitor dressed in rags, in front of everyone in the office. I just cleaned it up. I never said a word. I kept my head down, I kept working, and I kept listening, because while he was busy acting like a king, I was busy gathering every piece of evidence I needed to dismantle his entire world. The final straw then came the incident. Sterling had been embezzling funds from a major client account for months. The books were becoming a mess, and the auditor was arriving in 48 hours. He needed a scapegoat. He needed someone disposable. Naturally, he chose me. He called a board meeting, threw the falsified files in my face, and fired me for gross incompetence and financial fraud. Sarah, the only person in HR with a spine, tried to protest. She knew I hadn't touched those accounts. Sterling silenced her with a look of pure menace, threatening her career if she didn't stand down. I stood there, listening to him dismantle my reputation, listening to him call me a thief. I didn't defend myself. I didn't beg for my job. I didn't explain that I had proof of his own transfers. I just picked up my cardboard box, looked him dead in the eye, and walked out. I didn't feel broken. I didn't feel defeated. I felt relieved, because I knew exactly what was coming next, and he had no idea he was already holding his own death warrant. The secret rise here is the secret they never bothered to look into. I wasn't there for a paycheck. I wasn't there to climb the corporate ladder. I was the heir to the venture capital firm that had secretly acquired 45% of Sterling's company over the last 2 years. I was undercover, testing the company's integrity, because I was preparing to acquire the remaining share. And what I found? A company on the brink of collapse because of Sterling's incompetence and massive corruption. While Sterling was busy deciding which expensive tie to wear to work, I was finalizing the buyout that would put me in his seat. I wasn't just a former employee. I was the person who owned his mortgage, his company, and his future. The invisible man had been the one pulling the strings all along, and the invisible man was finally ready to show his face. The return 2 weeks later. I walked into the lobby. This time, I didn't take the freight elevator. I walked right into the boardroom while a board meeting was in progress. The air in the room was thick with tension the moment I crossed the threshold. Sterling stood up, red-faced, ready to have me dragged out by security. He thought I was just a desperate, fired employee coming back to beg for his job back. Then his lawyer stood up. He wasn't looking at me with disdain. He was looking at his briefcase with pure fear. I walked to the head of the boardroom table. I didn't even look at Sterling. I sat in the head seat. I put a single, thick document on the table. The look on Sterling's face? It was a mixture of confusion, disbelief, and finally a cold, hard realization of his own doom. The showdown. I didn't yell. I didn't gloat. I spoke in a voice so quiet, everyone in that boardroom had to lean in to hear me. "Sterling," I said, my voice cutting through the silence like a blade. "Let's talk about the embezzled funds from the Henderson account, shall we?" The room went dead. I laid out every single email, every falsified transaction, and every single moment of harassment I had been documenting for the last 3 years. I told him he had 2 choices. Resign by the end of the hour and walk out with your pride, or face a boardroom investigation that would lead directly to prison, with every single dollar you stole accounted for. He started to protest. He started to scream about his rights. I didn't let him finish. I simply held up the final page of the document. The signed agreement from the majority shareholders confirming my position as the new chairman of the board. He was finished. He was done. Karma ending. Sterling walked out 10 minutes later, a broken, defeated man, his reputation in shreds and his future gone. I didn't want the CEO spot. I wanted the company to thrive, not just survive on corruption. I turned to Sarah. I'd watched her for 3 years. She was the only one who actually did the work, the only one who didn't let the office culture poison her soul. Sarah, I said, the board has reviewed your record. You're the new CEO. She couldn't believe it. I walked back out of the building. I wasn't the invisible man anymore. I was just David. Justice is a dish best served quietly, and the silence in that office was the loudest victory I had ever achieved. Do you think Sterling deserved a second chance? Or did he get exactly what was coming to him? Let me know in the comments below. And make sure to subscribe for more stories of justice served, because the ones who think they're invisible are always the most powerful.